So, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. My name is John Lunn, aka Jonnychipz, and in this video series we talk about all things cloud with experts and advocates across the industry, covering a vast array of topics from skills and careers through to technical know-how videos through to personal thoughts and opinions. So whether you are watching this on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, thanks so much for tuning in. Please do take part in the chat below. Drop us a comment, like, and of course subscribe to the channel if you could. That would be absolutely fantastic. Okay, so my next guest this week on In Conversation With is an analytics engineering tech lead at Health Union based over in New York. He is an AWS Community Builder and is part of the 100 Days of Cloud core team and is also the co-host of a recently founded Cloud Code Life podcast. So I'm super excited to welcome this week's guest on In Conversation With, Antonio Lo Fiego. Hey Antonio, how you doing?
Hey Johnny, how's it going? Thank you so much for having me.
No, everything is really good. Thanks so much for joining me. I think, on and off, we've been trying to sort out this recording for a little while now, so it's super cool, obviously, to have you on the show just to kind of talk through, some really cool areas really that you're involved with. But I guess before we get into all that good stuff, do you want to just give yourself a little bit more of an elaborate introduction? Let us know what you're up to, what you've been doing the last year or so.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Antonio. I'm currently a technical lead in analytics engineering and specifically in the operational analytics field at Health Union. What does that mean is I work mostly in machine learning, MLOps, tooling around data for like my company. Mostly we're based on AWS, so it still falls under the cloud umbrella. And I also have been very involved with the online communities, as you mentioned, 100 Days of Cloud. We recently started with GPS and Rishab, another podcast on Cloud Code Life. Currently wrapped the first season, and we're gonna pick that back up in a few months when a lot of work starts going down, and keep just like being into the cloud space as much as I can with also AWS Community Builders program and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool to see what you're involved with, and of course, I've spoken with Rishab, I've had GPS on this show before now, so it's great to finally get you on. The trio of people that kind of run that. I mean, it's a super podcast that you guys have kicked off now. It's really, you're covering lots of different areas. I mean, just to talk, maybe we'll kick off in that area, Antonio, in terms of how that podcast came to be, why you're doing that podcast, and of course, how we can get hold of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea was really started by GPS and Rishab, but like they used to do a lot of random streams, like where they're just talking, chatting about various topics in cloud space. And eventually there came also the idea of like making something a little bit more structured. And I always been in contact with them. Like we always maintain contacts. Like we've been playing a lot, like on a side, not necessarily only related to cloud related stuff. I've been with like friends online for quite a while, and then it just came the idea of like putting together this podcast in a more structured way, and is in also topic of the week kind of situation. And that is basically how we started. And that was the very first episode that was a rewind episode. So like, what would we do differently if we didn't, if we were to start right now? And from there we just pull out 9 episodes in 9 weeks. So and then we decided that like for the time being it was a good time to stop because work was really ramping up. So we started like this was like what we could call season 1 of the episode. But overall, I think that the reason behind the episode is like trying to give more personal and look into the world of cloud, and like cloud code and life as the name of the podcast, because we feel like as professionals in the tech space, not everything has to be only code related, but we are actually human behind the computers and behind the role. So there is a lot around the topics that we learn that has a component of like, how do I learn myself in this free time when for example, I want to learn something new? How do I do it outside of the working hours? How do I reconcile that with the rest of my life, like with the rest of the things that make me a person, and not only the role that I am a part of? So that was like the reason we wanted to create this podcast specifically, was really about the person behind the role, but also how that role shapes a lot of like what we do as individuals as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's been quite a running theme of certainly the video series that I've been kind of getting involved with speaking to, awesome people across the community is one of the key things has been that, there's so much to learn. There's so many different tech areas out there at the moment. How do we stay on top of those almost? I mean, have you picked up any good insights, in doing that podcast, or, from your own working practices, Antonio? How do you keep on top of your learning? What are your insights on that side of things, do you think?
Yes, I think that's a very good question, and I feel like that has like a lot of facets, because keeping up with tech a lot of the time also involves keeping up with like social tech, as in like tech Twitter, for example, and so on. And we had a discussion about this on making sure that you don't just follow the FOMO, on just following every new trend in technology, but like focusing on certain things that are already kind of close, or like at least that are touching your current skill set, and so that you're able to actually expand and become a more like a T-shaped person, so that you have a general knowledge of a lot of topics, but you're very well developed in one topic, and you can be an expert as much as you can in one specific topic. And to me, that's how I kind of decide where to go. So for example, I know that like right now on my company, one of the larger projects is about machine learning observability and data observability, as well as monitoring. So one thing that I'm learning now, both during work time and outside of work time, is things like Prometheus, Grafana, and a lot of like this type of technologies that are into the monitoring space. And a lot of that is also working with the DevOps team in my company. So that is, for example, hey, learning this is gonna help me both in my job, in my personal experience, because where I want to like be long term is towards this like DevOps, like cloud oriented space. So that's how I decided this is the next step I'm gonna take in my learning experience. On Twitter, there is a lot of people that are like providing new things every day, and it's hard. Like it's fun to see so many things, because there are so many builders that are creating such cool things, but it's really hard to keep up with every single thing and learn every single thing. Even though if I had the time, I would just like sit there and learn everything there is to learn, because I feel like it's, if anything, it provides the time that these people have put into creating these products, and a lot of these products are wonderful, and I would love to provide my time and like saying, oh, I really enjoyed the product that you're building, I want to give you feedback, I want to give you I want to use it and tell you my opinions about it and help you out, but it's like time is a limited resource, unfortunately.
No, absolutely, Antonio. I think, never a true word has been spoken, but I think that's, some really good insights there. And it's certainly what you just spoke about there. It's certainly something that I've kind of crossed with my own learning, my own personal learning journey over the last, year, 18 months or so. But I mean, I actually we'll speak briefly about it at the moment, but I took the approach of using something like the 100 Days of Cloud, that challenge approach, where you kind of commit to yourself that you are going to learn something new over in this case, a period of 100 days. Obviously how you work that out, whether it's 100 consecutive days or throughout, the period of a year, that's kind of up to you, I guess. But I think one thing that you touched on is that FOMO, that fear of missing out, is I see that playing a big part across the social tech at the moment, because you're right. There's always, this is the next new shiny technology. This is the best way to do this. And, you're constantly turning your head towards these new technologies. I mean, what's your take on that, Antonio? What do you make of that?
In my opinion, tech Twitter is marketing, first of all. So like everyone that is like providing their opinion on certain tech is providing to a degree marketing towards a specific tech. So if you build something, the way that you bring people to use it is like saying, hey, this is the next big thing. Hey, this is like, it's all like really big marketing moves on like saying, hey, I need to bring in customers, I need to bring in user, I need to get like adoption for this technology and so on. So a lot of people frame their new thing as the next big thing, which is normal. Like it's completely fine. If anything, this kind of reminds me of the big thing about like that was a year ago, like where when Dino came out. And everyone was saying, oh, this is the next node. Like, you should stop learning Node right now. Like, don't learn Node anymore. Just learn Dino, because in like a couple of years, no one will use Node anymore, and everyone will use Dino. Like, it's the creator of Node that actually said, I prefer using Dino, blah blah blah. And now no one really talks about Dino. Like, it's there. It's a cool tech and everything, but no one actually has invested a significant like infrastructure so that like the adoption is so widespread that you should actually choose to learn Dino over Node. And that's the kind of thing that like tech Twitter brings to the table, because it's like a lot of the time you can't really discern whether this is like, oh, this is a solid take, this is like actually the future. And like a little bit like maybe when they were talking about, hey, we should move to React hooks instead of doing class components. That is a slow thing that eventually became the industry standard. And then if you were like fast enough in picking that up at the time when the hooks first came out, then you would have been at the peak, like the very early adopter of like the new industry standard. But right now it's really hard because there is a barrage of new things every day. Someone has a new thing, and so it becomes harder to dive deep into a new technology as this early stage.
Yeah, I think that's certainly been my experience. I mean, don't get me wrong. Personally, I'm very much one of those people that loves the new shiny tech. I can't, like you said earlier, if time wasn't an issue, I think I'd be involved in a lot more than I currently am involved with. But certainly that insight that you gave there, kind of becoming T-shaped, is again, it's one that I want to pick you up on. I see that becoming probably more and more prominent. Certainly over the last year or so, as to, look, we've all kind of made this shift over to cloud in some form over the last, potentially could be 10 years, but really over the last, let's say 5 to 6 years, I think it's probably been the groundswell, certainly towards Azure. And I think it's probably fair to say, when you go over to a cloud platform or cloud fabric, you kind of feel this urge to, right, which way do I go? All of a sudden now I've got to wear many hats. I've got to be, the networking person, the infrastructure, the storage, the compute. And so you were very much that generalist. But I mean, did you get the same feeling as me, Antonio? And I appreciate, you're probably coming at it from more of a developer side of things, maybe.
Yeah.
Whereas, traditionally my background is more operations, I guess. So, I mean, do you see it like that? And do you see any of that changing, over any time soon?
Yeah, so I think that this is mostly due to the fact that as you mentioned, like we started adopting the cloud and public cloud extensively in the past 5 to 6 years. So like if you even look at like job requirements that are primarily cloud focused, there is the cloud engineer role that is thrown everywhere, and you can be doing something from network engineering to DevOps to developer that works primarily like in a serverless environment, or like you can do with the same name, you can do so many other things. And I think that is a trend that eventually we will find cloud roles that are defined enough. But the thing is that the platform itself, the great benefit and the great I wouldn't say issue, but the great the new problem that is not really again, it's not really a problem, but it's like the new thing that we have to solve is the fact that like the cloud democratizes the access to all of these aspects in the software development life cycle. Something that before like you had like an operation person or a networking person only working on that. Now you potentially have access to every piece of that, because it's like one aided by the fact that there is a managed service for that, or maybe there is like just an easier way of interacting with the service because you just have to set it up and then it's actually operated by the cloud provider. And so now people are getting more knowledgeable about more aspects of the life cycle of a product. So a person, a single developer potentially can go and can build an entire product on their own, because they're actually using the entire suite of services that the cloud provides. So, for example, say I'm building something serverless like on AWS, and now you can do basically everything using Lambda, DynamoDB, API Gateway, and you have an entire service that is scales automatically and so on. And before you needed to have a network engineer, like a DevOps engineer, a development team, and so on. And now potentially you can do it on your own. So this democratization of access kind of dilutes the role a little bit, but eventually I think we will find a place where one is an expert in a specific style. So say serverless container more than specifically developer, DevOps, networking engineer, and so on.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing to look at, and I think maybe that's what we're missing almost, is that where are these kind of, I like the term you use there, a style of cloud engineer, because it very much is that you don't necessarily need in-depth knowledge across a lot of those areas. You like you say, become T-shaped, but then use those areas. It's just, I guess maybe that's, from my observations, maybe that's what's led to this kind of, I mean, the thing I'm picking up on is this panic to know which way to turn over the next. And, and I guess, the great insight you just mentioned there, if when we are looking at our learnings and where we feel we want to be working in the cloud space, just coming it with that angle of, right, we know we need to know a bit of breadth around the ability to kind of join solutions together, but then try and focus on that that really become that master, I guess, in one or two areas that really kind of tick the boxes for you. I mean, it's great insights. I mean, we touched upon briefly earlier on the 100 Days of Cloud. We mentioned that in passing, and I wanted to pick you up on that as well because, obviously I know that you were, you still are involved with the 100 Days of Cloud, and it's certainly something that's close to my heart because I took that challenge on. I mean, looking back on the 100 Days of Cloud then, I guess, when you first got involved with it, I mean, how has that progressed up to now? Do you see any, I mean, certainly I can speak of it from my personal point of view, it was a great incentive to get me into that kind of initial swing of learning again, from maybe not being involved too much with learning, just, on an ad hoc basis. I mean, what has it done for you? What's your take on the 100 Days of Cloud? I mean, tell us a bit about how you got involved with that, if you don't mind, Antonio.
Yes, I think that in my opinion, I don't have like hard numbers because we never really ran like a community survey or anything like that. But we have seen definitely a lot of people that like started their cloud journey using the idea of like 100 Days of Cloud. And again, 100 Days of Cloud, like, the 100 days of, as we mentioned, it's not like a new concept. Like there is so many possible ways, just like mentality, a commitment that you give yourself, and you give to the public learning, like digital garden. You can call it as much as you like, whatever you want. But I feel like we have created this like a community where people are interested in like sharing expertise and sharing their journey without knowing knowing that everyone is at the same level or has been at the same level in maybe even just a few weeks ago. And so this has created a lot of people that online are very willing to help newcomers to the space and build new things just because they want to learn something. And I feel like this, we've discussed this on the podcast a lot of the times, is that especially when you're looking for a job, certification themselves, like we are big proponents of certification, like there is a lot of like materials for like taking certification and so on. But I think that certification, once you get one or two, the other certification are like kind of pointless, and I think that they are more guidelines on like what to learn in a more guided way, because obviously like a certification path tests you on specific topics. So if you follow the topics that certifications test you upon, then you're learning a very well organized set of services and so on. But attaining the certification itself doesn't create any boost to your career, I believe, at a certain point, because at that point building things creates the boost, and the fact that you have a community that you can share with and get help from, and overall just like the commitment that you want to say, hey, this is what I'm learning, this is what I'm doing, actually pushes people to create more. And I think that's the big thing that we got out of the community overall. There are people that completed like 2 full sets of like 100 days of cloud, even 3. I think, for example, there is Ivan Chong that is on his third round of 100 days, and it's like incredible progress, and it's amazing to see.
I've been following Ivan. I think, he must have been, he is on his 3rd round now, isn't he? Which is fantastic. And he's been doing some great things. But it's just that, I guess, that commitment and turning to public and turning to community, it kind of makes yourself accountable that, I've said something in public now, I kind of need to follow through with it almost. Did you realize that at the time when you started it, or was that something that you just realized as it came to be?
I think that was the thing that made me do it in the first place. The fact that, like, if I say it outside, like if I say it publicly, I have the kind of internal urge to follow up with it, because it's like the kind of accountability system that is like not it's not like violent, like it's not like something that people are forcing me upon. It's not like there's not a review process of things that I said I would do, things I've done. It's just more like the fact that I just want to follow up with things that I put out there, because maybe there are other people that rely on the fact that like I have those notes. For example, one of my big thing was during my preparation for my certification, I was putting out my cloud notes. Rishabh has done the same thing, for example, and a lot of people have used them. Like they reached out on Twitter a lot of times saying, oh, your notes really helped me pass the certification. And for me, it's like a very, very I'm really proud and really happy about that. And I feel like it's something that pushed me to maintain these notes up to date when I was preparing my certification, because it wasn't only me that was relying upon them. Clearly, I was doing that for myself because it was like a way for me to keep myself accountable. But then when you see that the impact that you have on the community, then it also becomes a matter of giving back to the community, because they help you when you needed that as well.
Yeah, and it's a great kind of segue into that community topic as well, because like you say, the 100 Days of Cloud was very much about communities coming together to helping each other, and and I guess like you just kind of mentioned there, Antonio, when you do something for yourself because you're kind of preparing yourself for a cert, if you do that in a manner that people can kind of peer over your shoulder and see what you're doing, which is effectively what learning in public is all about, you get that added benefit of actually helping others. And again, speaking from my personal perspective, I've not really given that element any real consideration to the not through I guess through a little bit of ignorance, because I just didn't really think that was there in the community. And that's one thing that I think I'd call out, is that when you do start putting things out there, just out of the blue, you'll get messages, or you'll get an email, or you'll get a LinkedIn or a DM or something saying, thanks for this, thanks for that. And it kind of motivates you, doesn't it, Antonio, I guess, to kind of stay part of the community.
Absolutely. I feel like there is this component of kind of like social validation. Like you can call it whatever you prefer, but the fact is that whenever you put out some content and people actually use the content and are happy about it, and they let you know that like your content helped them in some sort, there is like that validation that feels you like. One, you're proud of the work that you're doing, and I think that in turn helps you push forward when the things are become hard. Like, so when you start learning hard concepts and it's something that is like complicated, but you know that like there is the community that supports you and is interested in knowing your take, even though maybe there have been 10,000 other articles on the same topic. There are some people that are interested in your opinion, on your voice, your take on that specific topic, and having that kind of connection and that kind of like a system of validation where there is like a positive environment for everyone involved. I think it's like very strong, because a lot of the time we just give for granted that people are creating content, but a lot of people don't get paid for the content that they create. Like you have to start to become like pretty big eventually to get actually paid for like running, like, I don't know, podcasts, writing technical article and getting paid for them. So a lot of people are just putting it out for the sake of like, hey, this is something that I struggle with, and here it is for you to, so that you don't have to struggle with, and actually just creating this social network of appreciation between each other and lifting up other people is such an important part of like the journey, because otherwise it's like this journey of like this lone person journey where you never understand whether you're doing it correctly or not either.
Yeah, again, is a great way to put it. As somebody that clearly, you spent a long time, owning the art of community and working with the community. It's great to hear your insights as well, because some, even now speaking to you, it's like some I resonate with, I understand because I kind of lived through it, and then others okay, maybe I'll get to see that kind of thing. It's quite a cool place to be, though. I think bottom line, isn't it? I think just learning in public and doing anything in public it just gives that wholehearted positive vibe in everything that you do. I think is probably the best way that I would summarize it. I mean, Antonio, not that we couldn't talk about community for a long, long time now, but what I'm keen to talk to you about is really, you mentioned at the top of the show there the job that you currently work in at the moment. You're working with machine learning and using MLOps. That's an area I'd love to hear a little bit more about, if you don't mind. Just do you want to paint the picture for me? What is your job? Kind of at a high level. What could it kind of stretch out to be? What is ML and MLOps, and kind of how do businesses start to use that kind of stuff, I guess?
Okay. Oh, so that's an interesting topic, because I feel like a lot of companies use machine learning, overall AI, in different ways. Like clearly, we are like, my company is a company that provides online communities for people with long-term conditions. So basically, content and articles and a lot of like opportunities for people to discuss online about long-term conditions specifically. So we are not like Google, or we're not like Facebook, or like companies that use machine learning at scales of like predicting every single move that you make. And for example, in my company, most like the use that we have currently for machine learning is mostly about recommendation systems, for example. So we're building ways of understanding that if a person is interested in certain community topics, making sure that they get some tailored content for them. So when something comes out that might be very interesting for them, like a lifestyle article, and they're very interested in lifestyle articles, they make sure that they are receiving that article in their like newsletter or in their weekly digest that they want to receive and such. And overall, machine learning really what it is, just like it just glorified statistics basically. So we're just making sure that like we use the data and the connection between the data that we have to automatically tell us something about the data that we have. So for give an example, like a recommendation system is just like a system that tells you, based on the fact that you as a person liked an article that has these attributes, like for example is about lifestyle, or is about is written by a doctor, and so on, and how many other people on average like an article like that, then I pull you in this group of people that like this type of article and send you this newsletter. So that's one way of building like a recommendation system. There are multiple ways of doing that, or like even simpler, like regression, like even that you, and this is not like specific at my work, but like given a specific house price, like a house type, like 2 rooms in a good neighborhood with garage, with fireplace, how much is the house, like what is the price of the house? That is like literally statistics is regression, linear regression, multiple regression and such. It's basically glorified statistics. It's just that machine learning sounds very much more cool.
No, it does. Yeah, I mean, I played with it around the edges, like you say, using the different kind of techniques and toolings like regression and things like that to look back at statistics over time, I guess. But I mean, it's just the one thing that kind of, and I've certainly dabbled in areas using machine learned models, pre-built models to kind of do some things, using IoT and stuff like that. And it always kind of, I see in data that you've got these various different roles again, kind of like the data scientist, the data engineer, where does it fit in, and what tools do you use, Antonio, to kind of build your models, and is it a case that you can use kind of cloud platform tools to do that? Do you use them across AWS, Azure? How do you work with those things?
Absolutely. So in my team, we are like my data team, we are like around the 15-16 people, and like we're shooting to be around 20 people. In my team specifically, that is like the machine learning team, we have a goal, like not everyone is joined yet, they're joining, but so I'm gonna tell you like the goal state that is we're reaching in a couple of weeks, of like 1 data engineer, 1 quality assurance engineer, and 3 analytics engineers or data scientists, basically. And what we do really is we use a lot of like, obviously databases. We use Snowflake as our data warehousing tool. On cloud related stuff, we do I use both models that we build on our own and deploy on our own using AWS Batch or Lambda, or we use also SageMaker, which is like the machine learning platform on AWS. A lot of the time, the models are either pre-built on SageMaker if the use case is very simple and all we need is providing data. But most of the time is like Python engineering. Is like the software that we have to write models on scratch using different tools. It can be TensorFlow, it can be scikit-learn, it can be MXNet. It can be there are so many potential packages to use in the machine learning space. But the tools, like state of the art is really Python for data science. So most of what we use is Python. Most you will learn about is Python. There is like a TensorFlow JS for JavaScript, but we don't use it really because, again, Python is mostly the state of the art. And there's a lot of SQL. There's so much SQL involved. And that's our data engineer work, like all the data preparation, cleaning, making sure that the quality, the QA engineer makes sure that the data is reflective, because we can't, like, for example, we have like, 9 million users. We can't model 9 million users like right away, so we have to make samples out of your user, and you have to make sure that the samples are representative of the population. Otherwise, you're making a model that is very specific for a group, but is not good for the entire population. So quality engineer has to make sure that the data follow certain patterns, certain distribution, and so on. And that's the job overall across the spectrum throughout the team. And then in my case, I am more on the engineering and MLOps side. So making sure that once our data scientists have worked with their models, we can deploy them on the platforms. So that's the more the MLOps part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool, really, listening to you to describe it. It's certainly an area that I've got very limited experience with. But I mean, the conversations that I've had with others around that is, you touched upon it, I think, then, when you take in that sample set of data as
Hmm.
a data scientist, questions get asked, well, why have we got to get a representative base? And, you start talking about all of this kind of bias that you can build into your
Hmm.
platforms using,
Yeah.
kind of AI models. I mean, is that changing the way that we look at our jobs, working in that space now? I mean, how often do you get embroiled in those conversations about, bias and things like that? Is that a day-to-day thing for you now,
Uh,
Antonio, or do you see that coming?
there are more situations where the bias can come into play. In our situation, is a little bit less of a factor in the day to day, because we don't really use personal information much, but we only use behavioral data. So what do you do on our website? And I'm gonna tell you will you like on my website. There are other companies that actually collect more personal information, like about age, sex, gender, race, ethnicity, so on, and that starts to become a more an issue, because, for example, in certain industries, that is a day-to-day issue, as in, for example, all the financial industry, at least in the US specifically. You can't use certain models because you have to actually explain how a decision has been made. If you're letting like a decision for like financial, like a credit card application or like a loan approval or something, you have to actually explain why you arrived to that decision if someone asks you. And certain models are like black boxes, so you just put in data and it tells you yes, no. And that can't
Yeah.
happen in certain industries, but also you don't want it to happen even in the industries that would allow black box, because the thing is that how much am I putting of my own personal biases as a person, how much I'm putting it in my model that I am creating. And that is a whole field of like machine learning and AI ethics and bias, that is like a whole can of worm. I'm lucky that we are in the data that we have. It doesn't show as much, but it's definitely always like a concern in making sure that the data is the representative for the population that we have, because we don't want to provide data, especially given that we're talking about healthcare and like articles about healthcare. We don't want to provide things that may be danger. Like, we won't provide, like, there's nothing that is dangerous really that we provide. We don't provide really like medical advice, because we're not a medical advice platform, but we just want to make sure that everyone gets the content that is tailored to their situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a cool area, isn't it? I mean, back to what we were talking about earlier on, which is that kind of, the breadth that cloud platforms offer, even when you drill down into specific areas like machine learning, all of a sudden, the dynamic nature of what that role entails means that you
Yeah.
now maybe aren't just technically focused, but you need to have that kind of empathy for other parts, legals, morals, and other areas of maybe the non-tech part of of a job in that case. It's cool speaking to somebody from that industry to see how you see those things kind of coming across, and how do we deal with them going forward. So I guess we've still got a lot to learn as well. Like, is that right, Antonio?
I think so. There is a lot left to be discovered and actually specified in the field. And again, as I mentioned, like the reason why we started the podcast, the way we started the podcast was because we wanted to show like the person behind the engineer or the developer, the tech person. And I think like as you mentioned, like every time you go deep into a topic. Especially when you are dealing with certain technology that can affect the livelihood of certain people, be it in like financial field or like healthcare industries. There are some industries where you can be very technical, but you have to face also your own understanding of the people that you're serving, and you have to have the people that you're serving in the best interest, and not only the profit behind the what you're providing to this person. Because the fact is, when we created this type of tools that make automated decision for us. It may be easier for the business, but potentially we are injecting personal views that the computer doesn't know whether it's good or wrong, like right or wrong, but automatically with the fact that maybe you have like a team that is not as diverse, or maybe it's like just one person that is working on a specific thing, you may be injecting certain views that are risky to inject in something that will change people's life.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just being aware, I guess, and it's going to be an interesting journey to find out how that all materializes over time. I mean, Antonio, on that point, I think we'll aim to look at the question that I tend to ask most of my guests when they come on this show, which is, why are we doing all this, Antonio? And where are we going? I mean, what's your views on what will be the next kind of big bets in tech over the next 5 to 10 years from your perspective, do you think?
So in my opinion, the going serverless right now is a safe bet, and I think we're gonna move towards serverless so much more. And I think that right now, if you decide to choose what field to focus on, especially starting your cloud journey, serverless is it's a pretty safe bet, I think, because there is so much around the serverless world, and there is so much untapped potential still in the serverless world that it can be a good way to create and shape a career. I am a fan myself of containers and things like that. So I think we, like with the adoption of cloud platforms and things like Kubernetes, maybe it will be simplified. There will be something that eventually will replace Kubernetes because it's very complex, and we will find something that is a little bit easier. But I think overall, the world of microservices overall is gonna just get bigger. And microservices, you can make them containers, or you can make them serverless, or you can make them a mix of both. So I think that's a space that technology-wise is going to see more adoption than it is right now, when people start shedding off like legacy systems and turn into more cloud-native infrastructures. That's the safe bet. Myself, I like, obviously machine learning is gonna be even bigger overall. It's gonna grow. This data science field is gonna grow because collecting data and data. And there is definitely like a lot. Like machine learning is just such a large field, because you can technically even just specialize in one sub field, and you would have worked for the rest of your life anyways. But it's just like so that's another like big field that a lot of companies are betting on, which is correct because the data that we're collecting is so much. But if I were to choose again, like if I were to start all over again, I would bet big on web development and serverless and so on.
It's really interesting to see what your answer was going to be, because for probably the last 10 or so videos, the answer has pretty much predominantly been AI and machine learning from most of my guests, and so it was quite a cool thing to hear that actually your take is looking at the serverless aspect, and that I agree, and I can see that personally from my own viewpoints in the industry. It's certainly growing legs. It's certainly becoming more and more prevalent, isn't it? In not just those niche businesses or those niche software companies looking to develop, a Kubernetes cluster for whatever. I mean, certainly Microsoft now they've released a lot of their, Azure features and functionality in containerized platforms, so you can kind of bring that down natively onto your own, which is cool to see. So, Antonio, this has been such a fun chat. Huge thanks for joining me. I mean, before we wrap up, are there any final words of wisdom you'd like to impart?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast. Really appreciate it. And I would say that, like what I say a lot of the time to a lot of people that are looking to start, if you're interested in the field, you should just start. There is not a time or a place where you have to know certain things, or you have certain years of experience before you can start learning. You can start learning now. There is never been a better time to start learning because of the amount of help that you can find in online communities, and also be involved in online communities, because it's the great starting point to making connections, making friends, making a network in the fields that you want to be. And I feel like cloud is just going to be bigger. So if you are interested in cloud, you should keep on just following folks, following Johnny, following everyone that you feel like are providing the value to the community, and you're gonna see that you can be part of the community in no time. Actually, you are part of the community just by taking part of it. There is no gatekeeping, as in, oh, you need to have like this article written or something before you're part of the community. If you want to be part of a community, be a part of it, and you can start whenever you are ready to.
I 100%, really good point there, and you know, quite a brilliant thing to say at the end, because it's so true. You know, if you want to be part of this community, be a part of the community. It's that simple, isn't it? I think you're right as well. I don't think I've experienced, I mean, any gatekeeping. You know, everybody that I've generally spent time with, spoken to, have been so open, honest, you know, welcoming, easy to get on with. It's just a fantastic community of like-minded people, all with different areas of expertise, all willing to help at almost the drop of a DM, you know, is probably the way that it is. Antonio, it's been super fun. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode. You know, huge thanks. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being an awesome guest.
Thank you so much, Johnny. Again, it's been a blast.
It has. No, we'll catch up soon on the socials, no doubt. Thanks, Antonio.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye now.